What is interesting in the sense, if we have to consider the reconquista of Granada during the 1492, it is interesting that because in this period we have to consider that there is a specific type of relationship or contrast, if we have to consider about this between Muslims and Catholics. And this type of contrast, it was happened in particular with the Middle Ages, and it was finished in Spain in particular with the Reconquista, but in Europe it wasn't resolved. In fact, we know that in particular with the 1440 53 there was specifically the fallen of Constantinople that was founded in the sense Christianly by Constantine in 330, and in this sense by the Turkish Muslims conquered Constantinople and then attacked in this sense the Central Europe. In particular, they went to Austria. And in this sense, we know that Karl the Five, the king of Spain, developed in particular his type of defenses with the wealth that arrived from the New World to defend the idea of Christianity during the Middle Ages or the end of the Middle Ages. This is really important in any case because we have to consider on the one hand the idea of natural law, on the other hand the idea of politics. In fact, the idea of natural law in relation with the consideration that we have to do between Muslims and Christianity, it was in relation with the Crusades, and it is really important that Crusades limited on the one hand the Muslims, in particular because the Crusades from the end of 12th, 11th century in particular, saw a lot of crusades, saw a lot of soldiers of Christianity went to the Holy Land. This is really, really interesting because these crusaders were promoted by popes. And at the same time, these crusades were developed to defend the territories of the Holy Land. And this type of connections to defend the Holy Land, it is really important because the Crusades were a sort of defense of the idea of Christianity and was promoted by the first Pope, Urban, because we have to consider that the Emperor of the Byzantine Empire asked to the Pope to do some crusades because the Muslims, in particular from the 7th and the 8th century AD, developed their power, conquered the North Africa, and then Spain. This is really interesting because, therefore, the people of Europe understood that there was a specific type of other with another type of religion. On the other hand, there is a specific type of connection, or better, opposition between jihad and idea of crusades. Because on the one hand, the idea of crusades, it was promoted by the Pope, and it was only to defend the Holy Land and in general that territories that were part of the Christianity world after the end of the Western Roman Empire, in particular with the idea of Constantine that founded Constantinople. We know that with Constantine, the Roman Empire arrived to be Christian. And therefore, instead, the jihad, according as, for example, explained Thomas Madden, the important historian, the jihad in the Middle Ages, according to Muslims, had two type of ideas. On the one hand, the idea that the territories are ready in the idea of in the occupied by Muslims, conquered by Muslims, were part of the territories in relation with the religion of Muslims. But in particular, according to Thomas Madden, the idea of Muslims in the Middle Ages, it was that that territories that it weren't part of the idea of Muslims religion had to be part of it. Therefore, Muslims applied this idea of jihad to conquer these new territories. Therefore, the idea of jihad, according to Thomas Madden, but according also with the historian Morera, in his book, The Myth of Andalusian Paradise, on the one hand, the idea of Thomas Madden in his book, The Crusades, and Morera with his book in the idea of Myth of the Myth of Andalusian Paradise, it is that jihad was a specific type of attack of other territories. Therefore, the crusade it was specifically, on the one hand, promoted by the Church of Rome, on the other hand, as a defense of the Christian territory. In this sense, in fact, according to the soldiers that went to make the crusades had a specific type of meaning only in the Christian territories. If the Pope promoted crusades in lands that weren't part of a Christian territory, the crusades couldn't have a specific type of meaning. Therefore, the only type of meaning that could have the crusades it was only in relation with the idea of a Christian world. This is really interesting because with the idea of the new world, in particular with the discovery of the America, in particular we know the discovery of America from Columbus by Columbus. We know that change the idea of crusades in relation also with the new type of population that were on the other hand of the Atlantic Ocean, therefore in this new land. And if the Middle Ages, according to theologians, according to the Rome Church, according to the idea of Christianity, had to consider the different type of jurisdictions, in fact, the crusades were only a defense of a Christian territory, not an imposition against the jurisdiction of the other populations. According, in fact, with the church, the Muslims could have a jurisdiction, but the church wanted, in this sense, only defend the Christian territories, for example, in the Holy Hand, but also in Spain, but in this sense also the territories of the East Roman Empire or the Byzantine Empire. We know that with the discovery of the America, there was another type of argument in relation with the same argument in any case, because we know that there is another type of populations, for example, Indios, Azteca, Indios in Peru, for example, Azteca in Mexico, Maya, etc. Therefore, in the North and the South America, etc., that people that were considered and called Indios by the Europeans. But in any case, it is important and it is true, according to this type of argument, develop a specific type of conquests in these lands or not. Because according to ancient theologians, or better, the theologians of the Middle Ages, the Crusades, it's only a defense idea of politics, not an opposition, not an aggressive politics. Therefore, a lot of theorizers, a lot of philosophers, a lot of intellectuals, in particular in Spain, theorize that this type of imposition in the New World couldn't be good and couldn't be right. In fact, if the Crusades explain the idea of defense, therefore only the Indios have the defense to make the territory free, because the church cannot have the power to oppressive and to impose his idea and his jurisdiction in the New World, because the New World it's not a part of the Christian Empire, of the ancient Christian Empire. Therefore, that argument that in particular the Kingdom of Spain used in connection with Pope Alexander VI or Rodrigo Borgia to conquer the territories of a new land in relation with the idea of natural law, it wasn't have a sense. It wasn't a sense. It hadn't a sense, because in this sense we know that if these territories of the New World it wasn't a part of the idea of Christianity, the Christians and the kingdoms that are part of the Christian religion cannot have rights in these territories. In this sense, this is the main argument, for example, of Las Casas, an important Dominican that explained that we can explain a lot of arguments, but in any case, these Indios are in these new territories, and the church and our theology cannot have a specific type of dominion kingdom in these territories. Therefore, the idea of connection between the kingdom of Spain, the kings of Spain, from Isabella di Castiglia and Ferdinando d'Aragona, and then Carlo V, and then Philip II, with the idea of Pope Alexander VI, couldn't have meaning, because that type of accord, with the type of deal, develop a specific type of connection between the idea of territories, lands as natural law in relation with the idea of we will transmit the idea of Catholic Christian Church. Therefore, according to Alexander VI, the Pope, this deal explained that I will recognize as Pope that you, kings of Spain, will have these territories in the New World only if you will support the idea of Christianity, and you will explain, you will disclose this idea to the Indios. But in any case, the argument, for example, of some theologians, for example, of the school of Salamanca and Las Casas, it was, we cannot do this because these Indios are not part of the ancient Christian empire or of the ancient Roman Empire that then became Christian. This is a new land. Therefore, the property is already them, not our. And the idea of crusades in these territories cannot have a meaning because therefore, this deal between, for example, the Kingdom of Spain and Alexander VI cannot have a meaning. This is really, really important because, in this sense, it is interesting in relation with the early modern age, because already the Middle Ages, before this modern age, explained an important thing, that the idea of constitutionalism, the idea of freedom, and the idea of theologian in relation with property belonged and was born during the Middle Ages, not during the early modern ages. Because during the early modern ages, the theologians and the kings had to consider the arguments of the Middle Ages. Bye.